We are not able to get through, ma'am. Not me, not Isha, ma'am, nor anybody.
You are audible to everyone.
Tanvi, can you please mute your audio, please?
Shall we start?
Yes, you can start, ma'am.
Yes. Distinguished panelists, dear participants, in this session on airports and aerospace in the post-pandemic world, on behalf of the faculty, staff, and students of the Adani Institute of Infrastructure, I extend a very hearty welcome. In the last 2 months of the lockdown, one of the things we have been constantly following up, along with the status of spread of COVID-19, is the flights will resume flying. It's not only because of the travel convenience it provides, but because of the fact that aviation industry is a sector which has spin-off effects on other sectors. It's a generator of employment and wealth of every country. It generates millions of jobs and has substantial direct and indirect impact on other industries. If airline and airport operations, aircraft maintenance, air traffic control and regulation, and activities directly serving air passengers, such as baggage handling, on-site retail, and catering facilities are direct impacts. Indirect impacts include the activities of the aerospace manufacturers selling aircraft and components to airlines and related businesses. To shed light on some of the impacts that this industry is going to face in the post-pandemic world, we have with us today a spectrum of eminent speakers with vast experience in this domain. Tanvi, have you joined?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so may I request Tanvi to please introduce our distinguished panel?
Thank you, Professor Lakshmi. I take this opportunity to welcome Mr. Vikrant Panchnanda, sir, who is currently designated as Advocate on Record, Supreme Court of India, and is in practicing aviation attorney. Sir, we are pleased to have you here, and I request you to kindly take over.
Since have not been. Am I audible now? Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Do you want me to start all over again?
Sir, can
Yes,
we
yes,
start
Ms.
it all
Mitra.
over again?
Okay, I'll just start again. The topic for today has been airports and aerospace in the post-pandemic world. COVID-19 has overnight disrupted all our lives, be it personal or business or professional. And several industries have been impacted, with the aviation industry being one of the most impacted industries due to this global pandemic. Lockdown has been in force in most jurisdictions, and airspaces have been closed. Slowly, we are seeing a few airspaces are beginning to open up. Limited flights have started taking place. But this is not after the airspace was closed for almost more than 2 months. For more than 2 months, we are seeing limited operations now beginning to take place, and the scenario, whether it's conduct on board an aircraft or at the airports, is very different now, and is probably going to be different for the next, one doesn't know how long, till this pandemic can be controlled. So, three key words that one needs to today keep in mind when you're at an airport or on an aircraft: SPH, I call it. S for social distancing, P for personal hygiene, and H for heightened awareness of our personal impact on those around us. Today, the scenario at airports is very different. We have to web check in, we have to go into the airports, stand in long queues, we have to go through thermal screening, and only then are we permitted to board the aircrafts. That again, as we have seen over the last few days, may not be foolproof, because states in India, many states upon arrival are getting passengers to undertake COVID tests, and we have seen a number of positive cases as far as passengers are concerned. This has led to a lot of problems because it reduces the confidence that air travelers have. um, B, airline crew members have to be put in quarantine, so that gives airlines less crew members to rely upon. So there are various issues that we have seen in the last 3 4 days, ever since air travel has started in India, and this would be a similar situation all over the world. Now, because of the impact of COVID, airports and airlines have to undertake more precautions. You have to have, like I just mentioned, precautions pertaining to testing passengers, thermal screening. Now, what are the major disruptions that it can have for airlines? According to me, for instance, now of course the idea is going to be to ensure that there is less human interaction at the airports. You have to web check in and print your baggage tags at your home or office, and then arrive at the airport, which means that you're going to have less people manning check-in counters, and they will probably be there just to assist you in case there is still a problem that you're facing. That in turn means that airlines are going to probably lay off ground staff personnel, because there is going to be there's going to be a lesser requirement of ground staff personnel at the airports. Why? To ensure that there is less of this human interaction to prevent this pandemic. Number two, airlines have to take extensive measures to sanitize aircrafts. And so what is going to happen is that uh, if you travel on an aircraft, quite often you see, just before landing, airlines are going to try, they have policies in place where they try and clean up the aircraft as much as they can while they're still in the air. The reason being to reduce the turnaround time at the airport. The longer the aircraft is in the air, the more money it's making for the airline. For the longer time it's on the ground, the less money it's making for the aircraft, and adding to airport charges, the burden of airport charges that the aircraft has to pay the airport operator. Now, because of extensive measures required to sanitize an aircraft, that will ensure that the turnaround time is longer, which may probably increase the costs for an airline while they're still on the ground. So that is as far as some of the impacts that we can see around us, that will impact the airlines as they begin to take off in this, I would say, still pandemic world and not post-pandemic world. Now, from a legal perspective, what are the issues that can be faced by an airline or an airport or a stakeholder? I think the number of disputes is definitely going to increase. Now, what are these disputes? I would broadly categorize these disputes. The first category being consumer cases. Why are they going to increase? Because a lot of people had booked their tickets, and flights could not take off. So we may see a number of cases rising where passengers may take the plea of the fact that there's been a breach in their contract. Airlines, on the other hand, would probably counter that this was a force majeure because there was a circular by the government in place that prevented them from taking off, and that is the reason why they were unable to fulfill their part of the contractual obligation. We have a law in place which is the Carriage by Air Act, which does provide for airlines to prove if they can prove that the delay was beyond their control, then they are not liable to consumers. So that is going to be one category of disputes we're going to see. The other category of disputes that we are going to see is disputes between aircraft manufacturers and airlines, because flights are going to start in a small manner, in a phased manner, on limited sectors. And we are already seeing a lot of airlines globally are sending their aircraft, especially long haul aircraft, into storage. And many airlines have already come out with press releases saying they're not going to operate several of their long haul aircrafts until maybe June next year, July next year. Emirates, which is the largest operator of A380s in the world, has said that it may have to prematurely retire a substantial part of its A380 fleet. And A380s account for a little over 50% of their fleet. So, therefore, a lot of airlines which have already placed orders with aircraft manufacturers, be it Airbus, Boeing, Embraer, or any other manufacturers, prior to the spread of this pandemic and prior to this enforcement of these lockdown measures, will probably try and cancel these contracts which they have in place, and that is probably going to lead to aircraft manufacturers going to courts, because they may have already got systems in place to manufacture these aircrafts, and it is going to cost them a loss worth billions of dollars. So that is one dispute we're going to see. Within the same category, we are also going to see disputes between airlines and lessors, because a lot of airlines have aircrafts, have fleets as part of their fleet which are leased either on wet lease or dry lease, and they would want to maybe give a few of the aircrafts back to the lessor, since they may not be operating those aircrafts for the time being. And we are also going to therefore see a contractual dispute between lessors and airlines. So this is, and the third thing we're going to see is probably disputes maybe between airlines and a lot of vendors again at the airport, like for example catering staff. Airlines have contracts with catering staff, and if one sees the way things are going, like at present in India, no meals are being served on board an aircraft. And therefore, again, airlines may have already had a existing contractual obligation towards these with these caterers. And therefore, again, to wriggle out of it may not be easy, especially if there are financial obligations involved by the airline to the air caterer. So that again is another dispute. So in short, we are going to see a lot of dispute between airlines and parties whom they have contractual obligations with, be it vendors like air caterers, air lessors, aircraft manufacturers, etc. So that's the second category of disputes I would see. Now, of course, what is the way forward? How do we see this? How do we see airlines coming out of this? Well, one of the aspects could be a bailout, but whether the government is going to really indulge and give a bailout as far as aviation is concerned, I'm not too sure about that. We have seen the government coming up with fiscal packages for various industries, including aviation, but we never heard a bailout till date. And whether it's in the pipeline or not, we can't say. But a bailout again has its own nuances. If we see globally, there are several countries which have handed over bailout packages. Uh, Whether it is France giving a bailout package to Air France, KLM has given it to, the Dutch government has given it to KLM. We've seen Singapore Airlines get a bailout and several other carriers. But if we see the trend where as far as the category of carriers which are getting bailouts is concerned, majority of these carriers are actually the carriers that are operating out of global hubs. Carriers which are actually kind of promoting the country's economy. Like if you take Singapore, for example, Singapore Airlines has boosted the economy of Singapore to an extent. The same thing goes with maybe Air France, KLM, several of these global hub carriers. These cities are global hubs, and they have kind of contributed, and probably not giving a bailout to these carriers. If Singapore Airlines was to collapse, I mean, maybe we would see less people traveling to Singapore, because not everyone who travels to Singapore is actually going to Singapore. Singapore is not always the outbound destination, but is quite often a hub en route to other places in Australasia and Southeast Asia. The same thing with various hubs in Europe, whether it is Amsterdam, whether it is France, whether it is Frankfurt. Lufthansa tried not getting into a bailout because they did not want to give up some of their shares to the government, but eventually they did give into it because they realized there was no way out. They even have they've also contemplated closing down their German wings, which is their low cost carrier. So, but as far as India is concerned, a bailout is also not a very easy option for the government to give. The reason being that we have several carriers that are operating in the country. Secondly, while Delhi or Bombay are hubs for passengers traveling from the west or the east to parts of India, but again, they are not really global hubs, unless, of course, maybe you're traveling onward to, say, Nepal or Bangladesh or Sri Lanka. But yes, a person who's traveling from Europe to Australia would probably go via Southeast Asia, but not via Delhi or Mumbai. So therefore, again, it is difficult to put Delhi or Bombay in the same category of hubs as other global hubs like Singapore, Bangkok, Dubai, etc. Number two, again, the government already had been criticized in the past that it's given a bailout only to Air India, 30,000 crore bailout. Questions had been raised whether that raises anti-competitive concerns. EU took it very strictly. They came because EU carriers like British Airways, Air France, KLM were suffering at the hands of Middle Eastern carriers, and they came up with laws in place which kind of specify the conditions under which state aid can be given and when it can't be given. And Middle Eastern carriers, which were primarily targeted like Etihad, Qatar, Emirates, they also came into that definition of those laws because when they were operating flights to the EU. So therefore, if at all the government has to give a bailout, it would probably now in the current scenario have to be given to each and every carrier. Lastly, on the legal concern, I think what we also need is probably a law in place which is similar to EU's Regulation 261. 261 aims at protection of air passengers' rights. The government came up with a charter in February last year, but again, airlines have been escaping that by taking the plea that it's only a charter and is not law, because again, that charter is not pursuant to a CAR, a civil aviation requirement, which is taken out by the DGCA. CAR has the form of law because it is pursuant to the aircraft rules, which in turn are pursuant to the Aircraft Act. And neither is it, again, part of any law. So therefore, now we do have the Carriage by Air Act, which is already there. It is, in fact, it was amended to include the provisions of the Montreal Convention. But at the same time, it only looks into delays caused by damage of baggage, bodily injury, death, whereas there are certain aspects such as inconvenience caused to passengers which are not taken into account in the Montreal Convention or the Carriage by Air Act, which the EC Regulation 261 does have. And that is one of the major differences between Regulation 261 and the Montreal Convention. So I think either we need a new law which looks into air passenger protection by incorporating these rights that are given in the Air Passenger Charter, which the Ministry of Civil Aviation had taken out last year, or they are included by way of another CAR or by an amendment to the Carriage by Air Act. And the last point that I want to make is that the government has no doubt tried to take out a fiscal package for the aviation industry. For instance, they currently only till the lockdown, 60% of the airspace, air routes only contributed 60% of our country's airspace. The government has said now they're going to open up that a bit more, and that will probably save 1,000 crores to the aviation industry in general. But I think if bailout is not an option, maybe airport operators, vendors like fuel suppliers would consider giving additional credit, or maybe if not additional credit, increased time period to pay the credit facilities extended to airlines. So this is a very debatable sector, one of the most impacted industries. And I would still say airports and aerospace in the pandemic world, and we've yet not reached the post-pandemic stage. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, am I audible to you?
Yes.
Yeah, sir, thank you. Thank you for the lecture. The lecture has extensively covered all the legal aspect on energy and on aviation industry.
Tanvi is not audible. Some students we have few questions. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes. Yes, please.
So some questions from students. How do you think the regulator, the DGCA, has responded to this pandemic?
Well, I think DGCA has responded to this pandemic in a positive manner. Uh, they permitted cargo flights, and therefore airlines were able to assist the government in rescue efforts by operating flights to various parts of the world as well as within India to collect supplies related to controlling this pandemic, such as PPEs, masks, gloves, and distributed to all stakeholders involved, be it healthcare workers, police, who required it immediately. Um, as far as starting the flights are concerned, yes, maybe the question does arise whether they were started too soon or whether they could have waited, or can something be done, because we have seen a few COVID positive cases that have happened, and they're related to passengers who were traveling on flights. Maybe to tackle that, I think maybe one, it's not very easy conducting COVID tests for each and every passenger at the port of departure, but maybe the DGCA and the Civil Aviation Ministry can come up with a revised circular where all those who are interested in traveling by air have a COVID test done and produce a certificate of COVID negative at the airport. So I think that is a way of kind of ensuring that we don't have COVID passengers on the flight. I was reading somewhere that it is not very easy to contract COVID on an aircraft because of the way the air circulation happens on an aircraft. But therefore, all the passengers who had COVID, who were found positive upon landing, probably had it before boarding the aircraft, and because they were asymptomatic, therefore it was not possible to detect COVID before they boarded the aircraft. Hence, the only way I think to tackle that, to ensure the safety of passengers, crew, and all those stakeholders who are involved in the taking off of an aircraft till its landing, is to probably have your COVID test done and produce a COVID negative report card at the airport to be on the safe side. But otherwise, I think the DGCA has done a good job. They've been very proactive. They also realized that there were passengers who had to travel because they had got stranded, and maybe somebody had old parents who were aging, whom that person could not travel to because it was not motorable or easy, because again the migrant issues case was taking place as well, and there was a lot of pandemic on roads, and maybe it was not safe to travel, the distances were large, and probably maybe those passengers were able to then take flights and go back to their near and dear ones. So I think this is some added protective layer in terms of a norm that could be maybe added by the DGCA. Otherwise, I think the DGCA has, I think, played a proactive role in trying to ensure that air operations starts smoothly, but at the same time, in a safe manner. Maybe another aspect that could be that DGCA could take into account is, from newspaper reports, we've seen a lot of airlines have cancelled flights on the day of departure, maybe 2 or 3 hours prior to the departure, citing operational reasons. Now, operational reasons could also mean maybe there weren't too many passengers on the aircraft, or some other operational, maybe the aircraft couldn't be disinfected in time, or for any other similar reasons. But it has caused a lot of disarray and discomfort to passengers, because they kind of did come out of their sanitized environment, took the risk to come to the airport. Many of them had to probably travel a couple of hours from a particular district to reach that state's airport to take the flight. And they all had confirmed the previous night with the airlines that the flights were taking off. So maybe DGCA could also come up with some directive to the airlines, whereby they inform passengers well in advance if cancellations are going to take place, and how the refund is going to be tackled. Because again, if the passenger does not want to travel on an alternate date, he should not be forced to travel. There's a matter pending in the court, which now that this issue has come up, again pertaining to passenger refunds. Supreme Court has taken cognizance of this, because the Civil Aviation Ministry came up with a circular saying all those who book tickets in lockdown 2 and could not take the flights as airspace remains suspended will get refunds, whereas that would not be available to passengers who booked prior to lockdown 1. But the fact is that passengers who were traveling either to prior to lockdown 1, who had booked tickets prior to that period, also did not know this pandemic would hit. Therefore, the court did say this is a discriminatory circular. Therefore, from that aspect, and you need to be consistent. If you're saying force majeure, then force majeure applies whether it is lockdown 1, 2, 3. But if you're saying that passengers should be given refunds, then maybe that why is it that it's not applicable to passengers prior to that? So the issue related to passenger refunds is also pending in court. So that also needs to be clarified by DGCA as far as passengers whose tickets are now being cancelled. Any other questions, Professor Lakshmi? I'd be happy to answer them.
Mr. Vikrant, we are getting many questions. So can we do one thing at the end of the session, the complete session? Can we take the other questions? We will move on to the next speaker.
Because many questions may be linked, and many also may be linked to questions for my other co-panelists. So that's absolutely fine.
Thank you, Mr. Vikrant.
The second speaker for today's webinar is Mr. Bennett Zendi, who is currently designated as Chief Executive Officer at Adani Airports. And sir has 30 years of extensive experience in working in aviation industry. And his working experience includes President and CEO at Frankfurt, USA, Vice President of Operation at Banker Hill Capital, and many other. Sir, we are pleased to have you amongst us, and I place my request to kindly take over.
Good morning. Thank you. So we have a short presentation for the group in terms of our thought process, how we are going to manage and privatize these 6 airports within Adani Group. If the team would be kind enough to put the presentation and share with the group. Thank you. So before we go through the presentation of our thought process, how we will privatize this public infrastructure and entities I just want to touch base on follow-up discussion from our previous speaker that we are now challenged during this global crisis with a short-term transformation for our aviation industry globally and specifically in India, as well as a long-term transformation. The previous speaker talked about the short-term challenges and transformation, policy interventions, and other opportunities that have brought a bigger challenge to the government and to the public. And we at Adani are thinking both in short-term and long-term transformation, but more specifically on a long-term basis, how can we impact the aviation industry and bring technology and think about expediting the future and bringing 22nd century aviation experience to India sooner than later, and putting human first during this master planning, design, technology interjection, and other strategies that we have for aviation in India. So we have a bigger task at hand with these challenges. As you recall, 9/11 in 2001 brought a whole series of new challenges to security at airport through terrorism threats. And to this day, security keep advancing to eliminate and mitigate any risk of terrorism attack. And that have even spelled to corporate offices, other entity, other infrastructure. So now the next biggest new norm and biggest challenge is biological threat that has challenged the entire globe, specifically the aviation sector. And having said that, we are thinking about a very touchless design of aviation that will eliminate any risk of biological threat. By doing that, we need to inject technology, we need to inject automation, we need to inject digital marketplace, a virtual reality, and a completely different experience. By doing so, all of this will create another bigger threat, which would be a cyber attack. And having said that, by injecting any kind of technology, you have to ensure that you're also safe from any kind of cyber attacks. So these two big ask and big platform is on top of our priority to design our next new airport to accommodate the new norm of biological threat and cyber attacks. And they will take us 12 to 24 months to be able to show the industry what the new airport looks like. And I believe we can do and be the very first in India and bring the future to us. Having said that, I want to share with you our thought process of how we're going to manage this new sector and new business at Adani Airports and a new infrastructure investment from a leadership standpoint and from a leadership of a process and psychology standpoint of managing this new business for us. So we have a mission statement, and our mission statement, we are inspired to be a market leader and preferred brand of Adani Airport in India for the next 5 years and be able to be the top 5 performers globally, which is a big mission and big ask to start from scratch. The culture of the company is going to be built as we're building our team through workshops and sessions. So then everyone within the organization can be part of this culture building session and they can adhere to it as we grow the organization. Our goal is most definitely by far safety first, operational efficiency, cost efficiency, industry penetration through quality of our work, revenue and profitability maximization, growth via organically or merger and acquisitions. Innovation is huge for us, especially now during this global pause and global biological and economic impact. And policy advocacy. Obviously, these policy innovations through our country and through globally, we have to take the position of having that policy advocacy position so we can adapt all the new changes. And we want to be industry trendsetters. That's why we are heavily invested in long-term transformation that I spoke about earlier. We want to enable a digital passenger experience to result 100% improvement in conversion rate to increase wallet share as well. So as an example today, in our 6 airports, let's say 40 million passenger travel, and out of those 40 million, maybe 8, 10 million passenger are users. How do we convert? How does our model, how does our digital model and automation model and virtual reality model and e-commerce model will convert the other 80 and 70% non-users to be users? That's a big economic platform for us. Opportunities in the horizon for the next 5 years. India is poised to become the third largest global aviation market by 2025. And that's why the future belongs to India. India is poised to have the world's largest number of travelers by 2030. Again, that's why the future belongs to India. Airline consolidations is expected to happen pre-COVID and now more so post-COVID. And demographic shift, I'll talk about the chart below. In South Asia, middle class from 2010 to 2025 is a heavy shift. And as you can see, India, 2010, 5% of the population was middle class. By 2025, 70% of 1.3 billion population is going to be middle class, which is tremendous opportunity for these first-time users, the first-time consumers, and they definitely are very savvy because generation XYZ and millennials are digital and savvy consumers. So how do we penetrate and convert them to be the users of the aviation industry and all of our non-aeronautical strategies? The infrastructure will struggle to meet this demand of 70% of the middle class because we don't have, number one, enough brown airports, enough updated brown airports, and not enough greenfield airports. Greenfield airports are brand new projects through land acquisition, and you build airports. So having said that, that's why you saw the finance ministry, that's why you saw AI privatizing 12 more airports this year. So the government has realized the capacity is not there for the next 5 years, and they want to privatize and have private entities like Adani Airports, GMR, and others invest in aviation sector, grow them, renovate them, update them, and build greenfield airports. The artificial intelligence adaptation will increase now post-COVID. In China, now 1 billion 3D cameras, facial recognition camera activation, audio activation, 5G have taken place, and private devices and apps are becoming obsolete. That trend will continue in the world, and artificial intelligence and facial recognition and audio activation is going to be the trend of the future, specifically to fight the biological threat and any other artificial intelligence that's going to be offered. In one of the restaurants in China, robots are now wait staff, and they deliver your food and take your order. So artificial intelligence is on the horizon. Value for money, travel will become a key focus for low-cost airline growth for the next 5 years, specifically now, the big birds and the cost of big birds. And this biological threat are potentially keeping the middle seat empty. The load factor, all of this will, airlines will look at a cost efficiency model and a smaller birds. And even post-vaccination and cure of COVID, that remains to be on the horizon for the airlines. Regional routes will continue to be in demand in the market due to the middle class growth in India, which also ask for smaller aircrafts. Green airports is on the horizon, brand new airports. And again, we are very excited about those opportunities because you can build them and design them from scratch and customize it per the city and regional activities. Domestic and regional airlines, UDAN was a big focus for the government, and now there are more policy interventions to stimulate the aviation sector. Next, slide. So having go through that, what is the mindset, the process, the governance of any organization to manage and lead a sector in the industry? For us, the hierarchy structure we have established that there is a global strategy to be had, and the global strategy will be managed by the executive board, the group at the group holding level, and we have identified the members. Then there's going to be a support system below the global strategy and executive board, and that support system is an advisory council. And the advisory council is going to be internal, external, global executives that will help us support the executive board. And then the Adani airports, on social responsibilities, we now, furthermore, post COVID, we owe it to our citizens and to our Mother Earth to be much more social responsibility and green efforts. So we're thinking about microgrid for our airports, that they are self-sufficient with renewable energy and other activities and initiatives that make our airports much greener, and an environment will become a top priority for us. And then there is a support system that will be a response panel. The response panel will be the airport holding, myself and my direct reports that will support this hierarchy. And then influencing the management and business strategy with the best practices is the steering committee, and that would be on the between my group and the assets at the airport, the CBOs that will support the cause. And then implementation operational excellence would be at the asset level and the asset CAOs and CEOs. Next slide, please. So from hierarchy, we're also going to establish a committees structure, that these committees will be very involved on the horizontal leadership approach, that regardless of their titles, they will be making decisions and they will be supporting via these committees. So the Adani ecosystem is tremendous, and we have Adani Ecosystem Council that will have us access to the solar, to the energy, to the gas, to any of the infrastructure, Adani support system, ports, coal, that would help our aviation system grow and be more green and use the internal resources. Health and safety environment committee will work on the health and safety now, specifically more with the biological threat. The real estate committee will work on real estate now post-COVID, on the virtual reality real estate also. How do we monetize and build that and have this new generation have access to? Then Innovation Escalation Council. That is the most exciting committee, also above and beyond all the other committees, because now their task is to expedite the future and bring the 22nd century to India, and specifically to aviation market. And then there is a steering project planning committee that will take all of these initiatives and mark it down of how do we want to implement, execute, plan, and manage the projects. The task force will see to it that get implemented, and then the regulatory council will make sure that policy interventions and government affairs are also involved in this decision-making process. Next. And then each airport will have a board of directors that will consist of a chairman, a board member, and a board member. And you will have a board member that is an executive member, which would be the airport, CAOs. And then there will be a decision sheet approval process that every asset will submit to this board to approve the initiatives, to approve the expenses, CapEx, OpEx, all the other that is involved. And then the committees will also support the cause and the initiatives of each asset through the board as well. Next. This is a sample of this decision sheet that is treated equally for each asset that will go through a board of directors for approval on CapEx, OpEx, and other initiatives. Next. So we have built a strategy engine for every single discipline of our aviation market. So this is holistically for our airport strategy engine that talks about uh, premium destination engagement on business district, barriers to entry. How do we become leader above and beyond our competitors by protecting Adani Airport, our intellectual property, our equation and master planning. And then our synergies among all of the Adani infrastructure, including defense, aerospace, supply chain partnership, end-to-end logistics solutions, internally, externally, per pack self-funded programs. I will go to that in larger detail on the Indians' largest captive wallet share. Strategic partnership. Who do we partner with outside of India, inside of India, with other entities that would add value to our business model? And then airside real estate. How do we manage the real estate on the airside, land side? If you go to the next slide, then we take each discipline, and this is the technical engine, and create a roadmap how we're going to implement the strategy. And then we took every other category of our business, like fuel farm, ground handling, cargo, CRDC, central distribution centers, as well as car park, and any other business that Adani is going to do within that asset. We also created a strategy that will give a roadmap of what we want to do and how do we want to do it. Next slide. So this is an example. If we choose to do duty-free business and duty-paid business, what is our strategy and how are we going to put our arms around that business unit vertical, and how do we manage the traditional approach and the untraditional approach with virtual reality, e-commerce, and digitalization. Next. The next slide. I think we're frozen, no? Tim, can we move to the next slide? Oh, okay, thank you. Go back one. You went one too far. Thank you. So as we're taking these airports, we have a 100-day plan. We are taking our first airport, let's say fourth quarter of this year. What are we going to do for the first 100 days as a revenue source planning? So we have taken it to 3 different categories: services, terminal, and real estate. And then we've created a primary revenue source, a secondary revenue source, a incremental revenue source, aspirational revenue source, as well as self-funding revenue source. And we have identified those for each category: services, terminal, and real estate, for the first 100-day plan. And we've created a strategy and a roadmap and a task force to be able to accomplish all of this per RCOD. Next slide. And the next slide is the permanent and a long-term revenue source plan, again, for services, for terminal, for real estate, on primary level, on the secondary level, incremental level, aspiration level, and the self-funded level. On the self-funded level, without investment, how do we create revenue, which can come into many opportunities: sponsorship, brand executive licensing, retail connect, magazine, internal magazine, exclusive versus free market. So exclusivity is an example. We can say we will allow exclusivity if there are key money for certain brands to come in and participate. Next one is, that's all right. Next one. We have created a job description for every key position, are their responsibilities on the airport side, during the transition period, during the permanent period, as well as to the airport city side. Next. And then we went further down and created a to-do list for our CBO, CBOs, our local airport assets, and then functional responsibilities for each individual and each category. Next. So now we want to show you and share with you some of the trackers and responsibilities that we have done. So we have an understanding of our deliverables, what is required. We have a clarified ownership of each activity, who leads, owns, and who supports. We have initiated a dialogue on a cross-cutting activities, which means cross-functional interfaces, and how do we go together. We understand the target timelines of each activity, when it's needed to be completed, and track progress of each activity, and flag off timely escalation, which means, can you help me? And I need to be on time. If you go to the next slide. And I've created some samples for you to see. This activity list is include of 180 activities per discipline and categories with a timeline, ownership, support system, committees, and goes through who's the owner, who are the resources, who is going to support, what is the status, what is the start date, what is the end date. And next slide. And that's just the samples. Next. I just want to, I have 2 minutes. I want to quickly go over the transition. Go to the next slide, please. So we've created transition team A and B, and these are our potential COD dates. And each transition team is going to spend with the asset team 20 days, 10 days team A, 10 days team B, to make sure that the COD and the transition from a public entity to the private entity is done smoothly. Next. And then we have identified the transition team A and B, and the functions that each person will bring to the transition. Next. That's the final presentation, telling you about how we will take a private entity, a public entity into a private entity on the aviation infrastructure.
Thank you so much, sir.
My pleasure.
It was a pleasure to listen to you, and it was really insightful to see Adani Airport Holdings and its hierarchy and committee structures, and the impact the company is making on the aviation industry. So we have received a lot of questions, but major question that we have received is this. So, sir, airports which were standalone properties and are exclusive domain of travelers, especially HNIs, do you see them integrating with the city's population, since now digitalization is the biggest leveler, like cell phones and blue jeans? What are your thoughts and what is the way forward?
Thank you. So the best part of our 6 airports in India, they are city center airports, which means they are very close vicinity to the cities. And having said that, we will penetrate the cities as well via our airport city and airport villages that are adjacent to our airports. And we will also create a digital and a virtual reality and an e-commerce experience that you can have access to our airport city, village, and airports from the comfort of your home. And also, if you wish to experience it, is not a too far distance, you can travel to our airport cities and villages as you travel to a mall to experience a shopping and a retail first class experience.
Tanvi, can we reserve the questions for the end of the session?
Sure.
Huh? So, thank you, Mr. Banerjee. Thank you so much. We'll reserve the rest of the questions. To answer. We'll reserve it for the end of the session. Tanvi, can you please introduce the next panelist?
Yes, ma'am. We have with us Mr. Ashwini Khanna, sir, who is currently designated as an executive director at Aerotech Support Service. And sir also holds 30 years of work experience in diverse fields of aviation, ranging from aircraft manufacturing and maintaining, and his work experience includes working with Delhi International Airport, Kingfisher Airlines, Jet Airlines, and Damania Airways. Sir, it's a pleasure to have you here with us, and I request you to kindly take over.
Yeah, thank you. And First of all, good morning to all of you. I've been listening to some very insightful thoughts since morning, and hopefully, this also broadens my opinion making about what's happening around. So, first of all, my thanks and good luck to all the students who are there. And with what is happening in the industry, that should not put you off. There is opportunity in everything in life. This gives you an opportunity to rethink, to rediscover, to relook as to what probably are further opportunities which were not explored when the world was all fine. So this will also give you better thoughts and ideas as to what could be done going forward. But I'm of a little different opinion about how everyone sees the aviation industry going forward. I personally feel that for any business there is a basics, and the basics for aviation business, or why people choose to travel. Um, so let's go into that very basics. So aviation is to do with aircrafts, and aircrafts to do with airports, and then everybody goes all around the aircrafts and airports, and this becomes to a larger extent aviation. There could be companies which manufacture aircraft. There could be companies which do all kinds of things, but this is all around somebody deciding to fly. So I think the very basics, why do people fly? Why do they choose air transportation over other modes of transportation? And one of the biggest reason world over is that they save a lot of time. This is not going to change. Pandemic or no pandemic. Time is going to be value for people, and air travel saves time. We are looking at faster aircrafts which will save more time. So I don't see a reason that why people will probably adapt to something else, because time is the biggest key essence which is not going to change. Before the pandemic hit, and even after the pandemic hit, um, air transportation is considered as the safest mode of transportation today in the world. So you save time, then you travel in a way which is the most safe way to travel. And obviously it is comfortable. It's a nice environment inside the aircraft. Though there would be a challenge how to keep it, bacteria or germ free now. But this is all thought of, and there is already a provision which looks into these things. So when I talk about basics for somebody, that why people would fly, this is the very basic, and I don't see a big change in this. So the good part is whatever is happening is probably temporary. This may prolong for a little bit time, but the end result is people will choose to travel by air. Let's take the example of India. I live in Delhi. You are at Ahmedabad, and there is Bombay. Delhi, Bombay is one of the busiest sector in the country today, and gets into a global ranking as well. So today, if I choose to go by road, it would take me between about 20-22 hours. If I go by train, it would take me 16-18 hours. And if I take a flight, it takes me 2 hours. So till such time, the road and the railway networks become very great and super. There is no other choice but for somebody to take a flight. So I personally feel that aviation has a lot to offer, especially in how the whole country is developing. Uh, and It's just a momentary phase that this goes out and people start working around this. Now, going forward, you know, so what determines an aviation growth? So one is why people choose to fly, and then for say India, what will ensure that there is enough market for or demand for people to fly. And where does the demand come from? It comes from the economic activity which happens in a country, the economic scenario. We will talk about it a little later now as I speak, that the economic scenario may have changed and will change as we move forward. Let's go into the other factors which propel aviation to grow. The second factor, as far as I consider, is urbanization. In India, the cities are becoming very big, and therefore the interconnection between the city requires a lot of aviation or a lot of movement between people between bigger cities, and therefore aviation is here to stay. Talk about demographics. We have a lot of young population, a lot of smart young population, which is aspirational, which wants a good lifestyle. Therefore, I see aviation as one product which is not losing market. Ben just spoke about the emerging middle class. Now, middle class, as it becomes stronger, bigger, there's a lot of disposable income. And it is this disposable income which actually propels people to take holidays, propels people to travel in comfort, and so on. So I feel that the very basics largely still remain. So the market potential has not moved. There is a lot of uncertainty around what is happening right now, and that propels people to suddenly say that the future may be shaky. But I feel this will just come back. This is just to set a little context as to what we were talking about. And so when I really talk about um, so what will actually change in the aviation market today? And I think from a academic perspective, it is very important that because COVID-19 is a not very understood phenomena. One thing which comes out very clear in this is be away, be at home, social distancing. These look to be the first basic reactions to a epidemic which or pandemic which is spread. And I think as we move forward, people understand the concerns, of how this disease or how this virus will spread, how this could be controlled. There could be a vaccine which may come up. There could be some kind of simple things which come up, and this will become part of life, and this will go back. Economy may take a few months or maybe a year and a half to bounce back, but it will bounce back because the basic uh, things which drive the economy for a country are very much there in India. And I personally feel that it is just a matter of time that people accept the COVID-19 as a way of life. Today, common cold is a way of life. We are not scared when we get, a common cold today. A lot of people, when the common cold can be dangerous, can have a huge impact in terms of how this can be looked at. And uh, this can be looked at differently into what the industry would react to. When I talk about um, there are more people today, I don't want to give that as an example, but more people in the world today die of complex common cold, die more of consuming alcohol, cigarettes, have more road accidents than probably COVID-19 has brought in. So it is just that the world aligns themselves to it. It is a new thing. It is shaken up everyone. Before this, in aviation, we have seen diseases like Ebola, SARS, swine flu, so whenever a disease starts and it spreads and it is not fully known, it is bound to have a reaction. In case of COVID-19, the reaction has been very large. The disease has spread more rapidly than some of the earlier diseases. But we must also understand that as we have moved forward, looking at the past, more people travel by air than they were in a few years back. And this definitely impacts the control or the spread of disease. There are more business decisions being taken, more business meetings which are happening. There is more business to be impacted than what was a few years back. So the whole people are shaken up very bad on this. When we talk about diseases like Ebola and all, they started from somewhere in Africa, and probably did not spread so much as COVID-19 has spread, just because of how the connectivity from China, and probably because of the progress in the air routes which have opened up in the world today. And I personally feel that times to come, this will all teach us good lessons. This will help us put good work practices in place so that we are more robust as a business, as an organization, as a country, so that viruses or such kind of diseases in future, we are better prepared as a world, as a community to face. So this is as far as aviation impact and aviation market is concerned. I personally feel also that as we move forward into the post COVID-19 kind of a situation, um, and things move back into action, uh, we would again be, pushed with the same problems we had few years back of high demand and less availability of infrastructure and so on. Let us look at this time as an opportunity to fix up all those gaps which existed in the past. I am very happy that Adani Group is progressive in thinking. I just saw Ben's whole presentation, how you have a future thought process for Adani, and what vision you have to be the um, developer, airport developer by choice, is one of the best developers, one amongst the best developers. And I'm sure the country would need all of this. I can just tell you, till last year, there was so much of demand in aviation that only indicated that we had so much of potential. That is not going to go away anywhere. It is just, you can say, this is a good opportunity for the infrastructure gap to catch up, so that when this boom comes in, there is no stopping. And I understand world over aviation market is shaken up quite a bit. It is for any business to go through this cycle, for them to explore ideas to to become more smart, how they spend their money, what their costs are. All these years in aviation, I know whenever it came to cost cutting, most of the people would reduce salaries, would stop some expansion plans. And I personally feel that in aviation, one of the largest cost, at least in India, goes into fuel. The second largest cost goes into leasing and maintenance costs for aircrafts, and insurance costs, salaries, airport expenses, other expenses are much smaller. But somehow, people always looked at those smaller expenses to go away, and the whole leasing, insurance, uh, pricing markets for aircrafts were very tight, and most of these buyers were not able to shake this up. I think this is a good time for the airlines to rework on their leasing systems, to rework on their pricing, to rework on their long-term maintenance packages. This will actually reduce a very large cost for the airline. And because there was a very strong market, and any new airlines or any airlines would not be very easily able to shake up the big market of leasing and related maintenance expenses. Uh, but today, with this kind of a scenario, I am sure people would be willing to forego and relook at. And this realignment in aviation will save them millions, millions. And with the low fuel cost today, which exists, and I don't see that jumping up for many months to come, would really make the airline health come back much faster. And with the growth potential India has, I think the aviation market will bounce back very fast, much faster. And well, I sometimes disagree to some of the opinions which go around, but maybe this is my opinion and I would like to hold on to it, and be happy later when we get into discussion to why I feel this way. But this is what I have seen in the last 20, 30 years, that there is huge potential and that is not going away. So having said that, I would only like to tell you that my voice started going. So that aviation in India will bounce back. There is huge potential for airlines to save cost and to rebuild and to put it online and be reduced. I think again my voice is echoing. Going forward, I would sum up that huge potential lies. Good time to course correct, not be scared of spending. Uh, Good time to relook as to what is the right size of expansion required, and use technology. Ben very clearly said that there is a good lot of technology available outside India. This is the time to use that to rebuild, relook, and realign to the aviation system here. With this, I would like to thank all of you. And I can only tell you that as a company, Aerotech has come out with some very good rationalization, optimization tools. We prod, we support sustainable projects which save money for the airline, and the airlines are very happy using some of our um, products, some of our support systems that we develop. This will bring in a lot of change into how business and aviation is carried on in India. With this, I'd like to thank all of you, and I look forward to interacting with you in the future as well. Thank you, Lakshmi ma'am, for this opportunity, and nice to interact with our panel members. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, sir. So firstly, thank you for appreciating the business that Adani is doing in airports, in aviation industry. And sir, also, sir, it was a very fresh approach during this pandemic situation on what are the changes that we need in the aviation. So we have received one major important question for you. So if you permit, can I go ahead?
Please.
Sir, so the question is how airports are going to manage the airspace. So when it comes to intermediary flights or flights with a halt, or we can also see the sanitization process that will be going ahead now after COVID-19. So how are we going to manage? Is India ready for all these changes?
Uh, so good. So there are two, three questions in your question. One is on airspace management. So this is a different topic. But yes, I think our finance minister did speak about rationalization of airspace in India. This will have a long-term beneficial effect to the industry. That means there would be better routes available for the aircrafts which can fly straight towards destinations, thereby not having longer flights. Longer flights will consume more fuel and therefore will make for a certain journey less time and less money spent by the airline. This will all come back as cheaper fares and better flexibility from an airline industry in terms of bottom line. So this is on airspace. Now you talk about the social distancing or pandemic norms of traveling within an airport premises. Now this is something which is really confusing people today. Everybody feels they must keep a certain distance between 5 to 6 feet within themselves. They sit maybe a few inches apart to each other. So this is really confusing because you say you can't make bigger aircrafts, but you have a lot of space at the airport, so don't come close. You know, so all those kind of things probably are confusing. I must also tell you that airports in India have geared themselves very well. Airports Authority of India, the DGCA, the Ministry of Civil Aviation have drafted some very good guidelines, and following these guidelines by the airports is going to be a very certain assurance that what you are talking about, these social distancing norms or carefulness of people not crowding, would largely be taken care of. The rest would be, the last end mile to be covered by the airport management in case they feel that there are some hot spots or with a given schedule, there are likelihood of queues building up at a certain point. They would have to take those actions on the ground. And if they are aware of such actions, this would help them, address those issues better. As I told you, Aerotech has come out with a tool with a university that I am working on. We've come out with a tool which helps the airport take such decisions. Finally, the decisions will have to be taken on the ground, which may vary but it will give them a good way forward which need to have mitigation measures in place. I hope I have answered your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Welcome. My pleasure.
Now we are moving towards the fourth session. So now I welcome Mr. Pranav Sood, who is Deputy Chief Pilot Operations, Air Asia India Limited, and he's also a holder of industry experience as captain and co-captain in Spices Limited and Kingfisher Airlines, respectively. So the platform is all yours. Kindly take over.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this forum, and look forward to adding to the already so much information and knowledge shared by the panelists with me. So, as we have spoken about legal aspects. We have spoken about how airports are adapting. We've spoken about Mr. Khanna, how the airspace and engineering side of has been working up. I would like to share with you the operations side. Is my screen visible? So how air travel is going to look like uh, in the post-pandemic world. Uh, I'm going to structure my presentation and my speech in where we are, in where we were, what has changed after COVID in the lockdown period, what risks of service transition are on board our aircrafts, risk mitigation aircraft systems, risk mitigation by crew and safety and procedures since cabin crew and pilots and our airline staff are in constant touch with so many people, and the risk mitigation by passenger safety and precautions. And what is the way forward, which has been covered by the panelists also. Where we were, we used to fly just like that, not too far back, 2 months back. We were all, airplanes are designed to go beyond regular, to go designed to go beyond regulatory requirements. Flying as a mode of travel has always had to prove itself to be a safer alternative for travel as compared to other conventional modes. And I think this is a fight that has been going on uh, for quite a long time. But aviation has always come out and proven itself that it is way safer than even traveling on road. At times in countries like ours, at times also walking on the road. And aviation is known to adapt to challenges of any such situations the fastest. I'd like to remind everyone that post 9/11, one of our group CEOs, Tony Fernandez, always talked about that's when he started this airline. When there was aviation was a target for terrorist attacks and everything, and now how at Asia we have come across as a very big airline across the world. Air travel was always has been the most safest, efficient, and most environment friendly mode of transport for travel, even in the post-pandemic world. What has changed for us now with these 2 months? I think aviation industry has gotten together with the regulators and come out with a lot many procedures, changes. They've adapted to a lot of SOPs. They've changed the research, how we can make air travel even more safer given the challenges. With the current scenario of health hazards prevalent in the world, airline also had to make quick and effective changes to the way of life for our passengers. All efforts are now directed to minimize the mitigate the risk of transition to the crew and passengers. And I'm sure that we have discussed what steps have been taken at the airports. It's actually quite mind-boggling if anyone has traveled or not. We have been visiting the airports. Uh, but 10 days before we started operations, working with the airport authorities in Bangalore and Delhi airport to see what we can also contribute with our ideas and together come up with a solution. And almost a contactless solution has been found till now. With these risk practices in the way we conduct our flights, air travel is again the safe alternative for travel. Risk of surface transmission on board is very low. Many risks they have mitigated. The risk of transmission on board is much lower than any mode of travel you take. You take by bus, you take by road, or even car, which you can't do mass transport of travel for people and also cargo. This is mainly because of high level of sanitary practices associated with air travel. Aircraft cabins are disinfecting and clean every transit flight. They are deep cleaned at times. They are clean, disinfected. We have increased our turnaround times to make sure that all the touch points are cleaned properly, like your handrests, your tray tables, even your seatbelt buckles are cleaned every flight so that the risk of transmission is drastically reduced. Movement of passenger and crew has been reduced, like pointed out by Mr. Krishnanda also. We have stopped in-flight services, just focusing on the requirement or whatever the movement is required for safety, and we also encourage passengers to remain seated as much as possible. The risk of passengers to passenger transmission is limited to strict personal protection equipment on board. Any passenger coming on board on our flights are given a face shield, a sanitizer, gloves, and a mask. So we are providing, even if everyone is carrying, but even though we are also providing to further reduce and provide more personal protection equipment to everyone. There's a lot of talk about air conditioning. I can tell you that much, that air conditioning on aircrafts are the cleanest form of air you can ever have. We have HEPA filters with us. HEPA filter stands for high efficiency particulate air. This filters 99.9% of the particles out, including the relatively big coronavirus. Air in the cabin is very clean. It is filtered and renewed every 2 to 3 minutes. Constant downward wash of air 1 meter per second reduces the risk of cross contamination. Air is sucked out through the floor and transported through the HEPA filters, and then compatible with these, air is as clean as it can get. How a pressurization system works is we suck the air from outside, which is almost -50 degrees, we compress it and then inject it back into the cabin. And there is no right to left or front or back airflow. It's always going from up to down and sucked out on the floor. Overall exposure to is much lower to compare to rail and car, which takes 10 times longer than a flight. Focus on end-to-end passenger experience beyond this screening and managing uh, the passengers before they board and by destination cabin. So every passenger like is checked for temperature not once but 3 4 times since you enter the airport till the time you get on board. Just taking this air conditioning point forward, completely airflow changes every 3 minutes improves fresh air from outside. So if you can see this presentation, this is how the whole air conditioning system works, coming from the roof of the aircraft and main supply ducts is sucked out. The flow from upper part of the cabin, the two air outlets are per cabin side. Lower outlet ensure good ventilation to seats. Upper outlet ensure good ventilation for persons standing and working in the aisle. And mind you, these all were in play all this while. It's just that they were not talked about because this never came up. But these systems are not made in the last 2 months. They are part of the distribution system of our Airbus A320 aircraft. So this is a clarification that we have got from the manufacturer Airbus Industries. Just to point out, the airflow passes towards the floor where it is extracting it because of the HEPA filters have extremely high efficiency in capturing the coronavirus. The circulation airflow does not spread the coronavirus toward the cabin. The question comes, can fresh air entering the cabin spread coronavirus? No. I'm sure that with this system, even on ground, we are using our own, like earlier times, we talking to airports like Bangalore, Delhi, Mumbai. We used to connect to the air conditioning systems which are attached or which are on ground to basically save on fuel costs. But now we have stopped that as per our new procedures. We only supply air to our onboard auxiliary power unit, which is a small unit at the tail of the aircraft to supply even air conditioning when the aircraft is on ground and both the main engines are set. So this is how we are today. This is how a cabin crew is with with all the personal protection equipment, with gloves, face shield, masks, gown to protect themselves. And this is how is the new world, the new normal that we have to get used to. This is the picture taken on the first day of operations. Operating group are high risk of infection. Airlines have changed. We have changed our operating procedures to mitigate those risks. Some examples are reduction in-flight services, PPEs for crew. PPE stands for personal protection equipment. Please understand that PPE always stands for a full body suit, but all these personal protection equipment come in the category of PPEs. SOPs for suspected passengers and isolation on board have been made. We have done many tabletop exercises as a company. We used to have 4 hours of online training throughout all weekdays for all our all stars at Aviation. We call all our employees all stars to brief them, make them as ready as possible to have any to take action timely as if any suspected COVID passengers are on board, and we take it very seriously. Another initiative that we have taken is Aviation All Stars tested periodically for COVID-19 with the help of Tata Blue program, and we will continue to do so throughout this pandemic, and most likely it's going to become a new norm. What are we doing for passenger safety and precautions? Again, personal equipment is being provided by the airline. Government of India has laid down strict guidelines for passengers for undertaking air travel. All passengers are screened multiple times for symptoms and immediately denied boarding if found to be suspected COVID-19. Arogya Setu app helps us identify high-risk individuals and thus reduce the risk of transmission from asymptomatic passengers, and also helps in contact tracing. On board the aircraft, all passengers are required to wear PPEs and minimum contact with each other is advised. All these practices in a short duration of travel on airplane not only reduces the risk to other passengers but also ensure that only fit passengers on board fly the aircraft. End of the day, I think what I can summarize is that it is for us as citizens also to make sure that we adapt and be responsible citizens and declare whatever self-declaration forms and make uh, traveling or going anywhere, going about our lives safer. I think future way forward has been discussed by many panelists on board, but as of now, flying was and will continue to be the preferred mode of transport in the post-pandemic world. The large impact of business and making the post-lockdown people will require more transport business and leisure. Yes, as of now, we have evolved a lot with online classes. Look at us right now on a webinar instead of a seminar. But I think we will evolve. If we have found a solution for this, we will have to travel for some other needs, and it is always going to increase and not decrease. Air travel being safer and more efficient is from the pillar of economics as well as tourism. We're talking post pandemic scenario. I think we all can see the developed countries, the more the development happens of economies, so the air travel will increase. And for us, being a developing economy, we need air travel to be a significant part of our economy. Passengers will prefer short duration on board and interrupts to much longer times in any other mode of transport. And I would like to summarize here by mentioning that we as airlines have done a lot. We are ready to adapt. In fact, we are learning every day from our experiences and adapting and improving our procedures. As we didn't have the operational experience for the last 2 months, but now we do. And as things goes ahead, we will be adapting our procedures. And once again, I'd like to thank Professor Lakshmi for inviting me to this forum, and I hope I have added some knowledge and information to this discussion forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. The pre, post, and the future COVID effects on airplane operations has been really insightful for all of us.
Mhm.
So there's one question which the students have asked is on the recent Pakistan Airlines A20 flight crash that has happened. So
Yes.
what are the risks that is being associated with being in the aviation industry?
Risk of being in the aviation industry, see, it's very unfortunate, first of all, and I'd like not to comment on the crash as the investigation is still on. But yes, as we come back to flying after almost 60 days or whole 2 months, it's not easy to just get back and follow procedures as we all do. Maintenance on aircraft has been done regularly. Uh, I would like to appreciate our regulator who has stepped up to this challenge, and we had numerous discussions with them before we got back into the air. We have done a lot of mitigation by getting pilots to go to our simulator centers to get current to do some practice, and also numerous hundreds of hours of almost 140 hours of online courses that we have done to keep all our flight crew and cabin crew current with procedures. These things happen, yes, but we all have to do our best to mitigate them. I
Very
hope
right,
I
sir.
answered your question.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. I would now like to request Dr. Devakar Gol to be to take the platform and to give a brief introduction about Sir. He is currently a chairman on Agro Academy of Aviation Science and Management, and he is also a PhD holder in management, acquiring India ICAO fellowship in 2010, and he has authored 11 books on management and law. Sir has also served as an HR consultant with International Civil Aviation Organization, Montreal, Canada, and human performance technologist of International Air Transport Association, Switzerland. Thank you so much, sir. The platform is yours, sir. Kindly take over.
Goyal?
Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah.
Video is not coming. Hello.
Sir, you are visible to
You are
us.
visible to us.
Hello.
Yes, sir, we are able to hear you.
Okay, I can see that. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this conference. And now, as a speaker coming now, after all speakers have spoken, it makes I'm addressing to the students of aviation and also the people who are working for aviation. So, with your permission, I start with there is a out of 18 books, there is a poet in me. So I start with a 30 seconds poetry to lighten the mood, and then I'll come to the topics. The moderator may kindly permit. Hello.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
किसी को गीत देता हूँ, किसी को साज देता हूँ, किसी को गीत देता हूँ, किसी को साज देता हूँ, बहुत खुश होता हूँ तो हर राज देता हूँ, नहीं कुछ बचता है जब लुटाने के लिए, नहीं कुछ बचता है जब लुटाने के लिए, तेरी खोई हुई आवाज को आवाज देता हूँ. Now you see the aviation, I'm an HR professional. And HR in aviation means I'm the nervous system. And when I talk about the post-COVID scenario, I have heard the speakers They have given very good positive aspects of it. But I must say in the post things, aviation is a field which has got dependence on tourism, trade and economy globally. So yesterday I was seeing that what the ICAO said and what the other organization, there are many agencies in the world like ICAO, IATA, ACI, World Trade Organization, World Tourism Organization, and their figure says that there is a fall of nearly 35 to 65% in the passenger traffic. The airports, they say about 50% loss in the passenger capacity. 97 US billion the airport revenue. Airlines may have 48% decline. All these figures which are coming must not dishearten us. First of all, since Adani Group has joined the aviation, I must congratulate them. And I'm very happy to see the CEO talk about his plan. And in the beginning of my lecture, I must say that what a optimistic the strategy plan Adani Group has made. They're welcome in the aviation industry. And I hope that with the expertise what we have gone in the airport operation, they will succeed and they will be able to see that India is fulfilling their national aviation policy. To the background, I must say that COVID has really come out with a great amount of impact in terms of revenue loss, in terms of slowing out the process of development, what was going on. But still, I must say that we are number 3 in the passenger traffic in the world after China and US. We are number 7 in the world in the international traffic. And our plan goes for 2027 to be number 1 in the domestic sector. How it is going to come? You see, I must agree that Ashwini has very rightly said that there is a positive aspect. I say this COVID as a blessing in disguise. How it can be? Because we were going in the process of automation with the use of artificial intelligence. And these were our plan to make the physical contact as less as possible by way of all kind of automations, whether the security is there, whether the clearances are there. Now it is a compelling circumstances now today that we are going to adopt the artificial intelligence in a big way, in a much shorter time, accelerating the process of aviation, the passenger. The most important thing is how to have the confidence, the restoration of the passengers. I'm in Mauritius. I'm held up last 2 months. And my flight is Emirates. So I know how much fear psychosis has been generated in the air travelers. So first and foremost, the thing is that we have to restore that confidence. And Mr. Sood has rightly pointed out his presentation. I was seeing AirAsia. He has given certain aspects which are going to generate the confidence of the passenger that air traffic is safe. Second thing is coming about the fear of the people that it may take more time for passenger clearance or going for that, and reporting time was 2 hours, it would be more. I must say that it's not like that. You see, with the automation, we are going for robotics. You will find a lot of robots at the airport. We are going to have in the world the air traffic control by robots, no air traffic controller. And we are in a country which has got most sophisticated things are there. Adani Group is so fortunate to come in the aviation at a time when we have modernized our airports like anything coming on the map of the world. ACI surveys of ASQ says 4.98 rating. Now, what comes to the robotics in the aviation? What comes in the, now comes to the point that people are talking that one seat should be kept vacant to increase the 33% price of the air ticket. For that, I say airlines, I can definitely step into the shoes of airlines. They are having a big problem. Last 2-3 months, they are paying a salary bill roughly with Vistara or Indigo or Go Air. It comes from 100 crores to about 300 crores a month. And they are sustaining these losses. Over and above their parking charges, their aircrafts are parked at the airports. When it comes to the question of revenue generation, there is going to be some retrenchment. It is obvious about Emirates has shell out 30% of the employees. Now, big aircraft 380 or American Airlines with the 300, 200 series, they have really made them storing. These all are the things which are compulsion, and this is not new. This kind of slowdown is there, but the progressive, you see the in the cloud, there is always a silver lining in the dark cloud. With this COVID, we have got preparations, the less manpower, because manpower constitutes about 45 to 50% of the bill of any airport operator or airline or other things. Look at the cargo revenue it's going to generate. You see, what are the sources of revenue? People say it is taking more time. About 30 to 35% revenue comes to us from the aeronautical sources. Where in the world, in other countries, were having about 65, 70% revenue in the aviation sector coming from the commercial aspect, non-aeronautical. When a passenger comes, you see, we are our bread and butter in aviation is passenger or the cargo. Cargo, we have got a policy where a dwell time for 24 hours, we came to 12 hours, we came out to 8 hours air to truck, truck to air, the dwell time in cargo. See the how fast movement is there. There is no coronavirus things are there. 26% revenue comes for any airport operator after the cargo generation. Now comes the question of speeding up the traffic. I remember Bombay Airport, I was there in 1986-87. There used to be only 200 movements a day. Today at Bombay and Delhi, we are handling about 1,300 aircrafts a day. Their movements by the air traffic controllers. We have got the most sophisticated radars. So to the students who are there with the Adani Institute here or who are studying for aviation management, I must say that India is a country where growth in aviation is 23%, which was unanticipated. We never believed before the open air policy came in 93 that India will be on the world map in aviation like the leader. We are leading. I go across the world in different countries and I am a proud Indian as a HR professional that we are giving inputs to the people and they are applying to it. In the Singapore one conference I was there, in Narita, other airports, 16 airport people were there and they were all heads of HR and we are the Indians who have got the expertise, who have excelled in the field. Now comes the question of airlines, how they are going to come up and cope up with the post scenario where heavy losses are there and people are saying airlines how they will run. Because if the one seat is kept vacant, but the people perception is there, though I am agreeing with my Minister of Civil Aviation that this is not going to solve the problem, whether the Supreme Court has given the ruling that one seat to be kept vacant in between, because what kind of sanitization is there, what kind of precautions the airlines are taking. If I am going to fly from Mauritius to Delhi now, evacuation flight, there will be so many tests on me. And secondly, we are disciplined now. Corona is going to stay. Let us say we have to be disciplined now. It is something called blessing in disguise, in the sense we are going to have respect to the nature. We are going to have discipline in management. Now, air turbine fuel. Fuel constitutes about 45% of air ticket goes in the air turbine fuel. Why 380 they are not being able to mobilize now? I came by 380 to Mauritius because full traffic was there, 500 people in the aircraft. 380 cannot move. Emirates is having nearly 100 380 world over. Their production is stopped because they were not getting that much passenger load, which is essential to operate. But the air turbine fuel, let the OPEC country, when the world requests the OPEC countries to reduce the prices of the petrol or air traffic. That will substantially give the relief to the airlines for the losses what they were suffering without affecting the passenger load. Secondly, unless the passenger comes to the airport, our entire system is held up. So we must see that our passenger traffic is there. We must have the passenger traffic to the tune what statistics we were having. It will take 1 year, 2 year time because you see so much things are in the blocking. It may take 6 months, 1 year. Ashwini has rightly said he is optimistic. I am also very optimistic about the future of the aviation and we are going to be leaders because so much advancement is there. We had the cyber security threats. We were preparing for that, for automation, how to mobilize the people for mobile phone and all. Now this corona has come as a blessing in disguise, I must admit, that today the passenger is going to be disciplined and he is having seamless traffic, seamless movement at the airport, maybe having physical distancing. That is not going to slow the process because whatever time it was taking for the manual by CASF and other people to having baggage stamping, for having the so many tests, physical handling, that is not there now. So that reduces the time. Second aspect is there when the passenger is arriving. Let us mobilize the revenue at the airport by way of non-traffic revenue. Go to Changi airport, go to any other airport, go to even our airport. Thanks to GMR, GV or these private people coming as a joint venture as a greenfield airport, they have made a commercial hub there. The people don't prefer to go to the mall in the departing passenger to purchase the gifts and other things. Parking has become a heaven for generation of revenue. Because the people are spending time and you are giving them facility right from haircut. Now this corona has given a good market for the haircut, the beauty parlors and other things at the airport. Let it be one source of the revenue generation. All over the world, it was all stuck down. Now the flights are going to operate. So we have to look for the aspects where revenue generation can be there to cope up with the financial losses we were suffering. But the most important thing which comes to my mind is restoring the confidence of the air traveler in the air traveling. Because I am finding so much fear psychosis among the people. Even when I go with my wife and all, we are going back after this 2 months here, one flight evacuation flight is coming up. So there is some kind of thing how to do it. Once it comes into practice, the other speaker has rightly said that this corona is a new kind of virus. Earlier we had swine flu, we had got bird flu, we had got SARS, we got such a great amount of viruses, things were there. Somehow the people say this is artificial virus, that's why it is taking time for vaccine and all. But with the proper distancing, it can be controlled. I'm in Mauritius, you see, there is no case here. I'm enjoying these last 2 days in spite of that lockdown. Why? Because they are disciplined in Mauritius. We are being able to move out, enjoying the climate. It is a heaven on earth and a paradise. And there is no effect as such. Very few cases, 1 or 2 cases, hardly 1 or 2 death occurred, and hardly some people who have come by ship. That has caused something, but they stopped. So like this, like India has become the thing. Coming back to the aviation again, the revenue is very important to run anything. Without finance, nothing moves out. And when you are a student of aviation management, try to learn one thing. It is a field which is different from any other field. Aviation education is not everybody's cup of tea. I'll request Dr. Lakshmi to circulate my article on it, which is published in International Journal. Because you need to have an aptitude. As a trainer, as an aviator, as a manager, as a professional, I can change your mindset, but the segment can't be changed. Here, you require a great amount of patience. It's not an IT sector. You students, I'm addressing to you as a student of aviation or working in aviation. It's not an industry where you are working for an airline or we are working for an airport operator and you just say, there's a jump, I must switch over. No. You must have the bonding with the organization and you must be the institutional manager. Multiplicity, multi-skilling is the key of success in aviation. And the most important thing is your communication skills. Your patience level means your empathy level, which works. If you are an air traffic controller, I recruit about 2,000, I recruited for my airport air traffic controllers. The basic thing is psychometrics. You require a great amount of patience at the airport, working for the airport. Passenger is God for you. So whether passenger is wrong, passenger wants you smiling, whether you are airport attendant or whether you are airport manager, whether you are any working, you are coming in contact with the passenger, even in this post-COVID scenario where physical contact is there, they want to see the smiling faces. That gives you business. And he is not concerned, a passenger is not concerned that you have worked for 12 hours. So for coming in the aviation field, you all students have a bent of mind. There may be some kind of monotonous jobs. You may be air hostess, air attendant, you may be facilitating the cargo, you may be doing a job, you may be air traffic controller where right from the beginning as junior executive to the senior DGM, GM level, your jobs remain the same. Working on the radar, you know that there is a area control radar, there is a reporting radar, there is a approach radar, there is fundamental radar, and you have got different kind of ratings. How you enjoy your job. Aviation, another thing is, we don't retire in aviation. One good thing I'm telling you, this is not a job where you will retire. I can never retire. I'm in Amsterdam with Joint Aviation Authorities. And there we have got experts 70 years of age, 75 years of age, coming from Glyden, coming from the Hoftrop metro station, taking the bicycle, coming there, giving lecture and going back. So knowledge is so much. Aviation is such a beautiful field, and aviation is the most satisfying field. You all student, but must be sincere about your studies. Must be sincere about to see the role plays, the case studies and other things. Somebody asked the question of, you see the aircraft accident, why Pakistan has it. You see, technical flaws, human error, we conduct the so many ticks. There should not be human error elimination. A machine is a machine. I must say, when we talk about artificial intelligence, the robotics and other things, there is always a man behind the machine. We have got at least 2 hours flight plan is ready before a flight takes off. The pilot knows about the flight plan, flight dispatcher prepares the plan, the air hostess, entire crew, the maintenance staff, and there are mandatory pre-checks are there. Sometimes carriage has not come down and he has to have belly landing. It's a luck, sheer luck or expertise of the pilot. Otherwise, you see accidents, incident happens. Errors are universal. But you see, every accident is not fatal. And there is an element of human error, it is universal. So there are difference between the lapse, errors, omissions, mistakes. But in the aviation industry, we go for the perfection. And we have got, now another field is coming, the national aviation policy of the country. All aviation students, all of you, I request you to kindly open the laptop and see our National Aviation Policy 2016. Because that is your future. That is your future, I'm telling you. Whether any discipline of that, whether in the airline, whether the airport operator, whether in the cargo, whether the ground handling agencies, anywhere. And become a institutional manager when you join the aviation. I'm an HR personnel. You ask me any question, air traffic control require for fire, for cargo, for operations. Because we have walked on the earth in the aviation. We acquired knowledge to have institutional manager. A passenger is not concerned which discipline you belong to. You are working at the airport, you must know what is threshold point. How much is the length of the runway? What is Airbus? What are the things are there in entire system? So as an aviation student doing, I go to various places in the country and abroad talking to the aviation students. The MBA aviation mushrooming of students in the country. Are they solving? Are we getting the product from there? In the aviation, no. I'm not getting the product. Because they are not being able to line up. They must see that what is the requirement of an airline. What they require. Product should be made by talking, discussing, making the academics of MBA by discussing with the airlines, with the airport operator. What is the requirement? Then you make your syllabi, then you make your things. And on the job training. It is not being done. So aviation education is not everybody's cup of tea. You need to step into the shoes. And post-COVID era is more difficult but more easy. I'm giving you a very bright future line is there. The government of India has says 150 airports to come up. 50 are already there. Now Adani group has come, such a big group has come. I've got very high expectations. And they are lucky to have expertise from us. Ahmedabad airport, Raipur airport, Lucknow airport. We have modernized these airports like anything, the world level. You see the appreciation letters we have got number of, and they're lucky to step into the shoes, taking the things with us. And high amount of expectations are there. And the government and the other people, stakeholders are providing them. Only thing, how I should increase the passenger traffic, how I should mobilize more, how I should have maintained my plan to be India #1 in the world for domestic passenger. Now, low cost carriers are there. There is a bright future for them. There are no frill airports in the country. You are finding the airports with the ATRs coming up, and there you require manpower. We require at least 3 lakh people still there in the aviation sector for making our national aviation policy workable and this regional connectivity scheme to come into existence. Because small aircraft, we have got made the airport tabletop airports. You see Pakyong. You never believed that that kind of connectivity India has given. And tourism is one field. We are dependent on tourism also for the passenger. See this Mauritius, the entire revenue is passengers. There are about 1,600 honeymooners stayed there from March. They're in the hotels here because of this corona. See their flight. They're arranging some flights for them. They came for the honeymoon. This is the paradise. They went to the tourism is one factor. Trade is one factor. We are dependent at the airport. Tourism been linked. And how tourism can be there? Unless and until you are having the better connectivity in the country, we can't have. I go to Switzerland, I go to many places. There is nothing charms me there. Because my country has got better places. My islands are much better. In Lakshadweep Island, 32 islands are there. My Agathi airport is my favorite airport I visited. We are not being able to make it because connectivity is not there. You want to go to Titlis, so much good transportation is there. You go to any place in the Europe and other places, but in my country, a tourist comes here, he is not being able to go to Rohtang Pass, he is not being able to go to Changu Lake Moisi because that kind of ropeways, that kind of modern systems we could not develop. Now, this is the high time. We must see that tourism is, which is going to give the aviation a great amount of support, augmenting this in the post-COVID era also. Today, I go there, I talk in Mauritius, the people coming from different countries, and as a person here, I was talking to them, they are afraid of my country. I say, why you are not going to Rohtang Pass? Why you are not going to Kashmir and other places? Why you are not going to Lakshadweep Islands? Why you are not going to Port Blair, Andaman Nicobar Islands? Beautiful places, Virgin Islands. I say, oh, sorry, here, how to have the air travel there, and you see, I'll be in Cochin, how to take the aircraft from there, how to take the helicopter and all. There is a great, you see, demand of helicopters. You can have wide body helicopters. Why the helicopters failed? My friend VP Sharma was the chairman of Helicopter Corporation. He started a very good project at Delhi Airport for Rohini just to start. He could not succeed because we could not get the people even for 500 rupees to go from one place to another by helicopter. He had 5, 6, he made the helipad also. There's something we have to think about in the aviation sector, all stakeholders, including the Adani Group. I must request them that they must see the areas where they can line up with the tourism, where they can get more people from different countries. Because air travel is become now a common man thing. Ore desh kaam na kare. Prime Minister told. Hawai chappal, Hawai safar, the slogans of this. That is a big message. And don't think that no frill airports are not having revenue. They have got employment at least. We have got skill development ministry, national skill development policy. See how much we are doing. I associated with the additional secretary government of India, Mrs. Agarwal, and she was talking about that what skill development in the aviation sector is doing. Is it making a headway? These private players should also join that. Instead of making institutions just for that, they should see what fruitful result they are giving. National skills policy for the aviation, how they are preparing the manpower, even unskilled people required at the airport. The loading, unloading of cargo and other things. And cargo is a major junk. They must see that skill development is a must for employment generation. If a person is doing MBA aviation and he doesn't get the job, he'll be disheartened. How will encourage the person? The first thing he asks, sir, after this MBA aviation, where I'll get the job, airlines will take me or not. And why airlines should take you? Unless you are product for them, unless you know them. Nobody wants to spend so much money on the training and all. I went for one step further. I was at the final rank of Vice Chancellor for the National University. There they say how to have the air traffic control and other things. Degree should be like that. 5-year course should be like that. Where you are having the training mixed with that. To all students, my request to Dr. Lakshmi and the Adani Group is that Indian Institute tell the people to be very much aware about the national aviation policy government of India. Go bit by bit for airlines and other. And there is a very bright future in aviation. And post era also, it will take some time to discipline the people, but it will come up another 5 6 months or 1 year. You will find we are again rising up. Now, one thing more, I end up with my share, parting share. It's a competition always, survival of the fittest. So I say to them, अब हवाएं ही करेंगी रोशनी का फैसला. अब हवाएं ही करेंगी रोशनी का फैसला. जिस दिए में जान होगी वही जला रह जाए. Be the best. Thank you. I'm not getting your voice. Hello. I'm not getting the voice.
Yeah, sir. Thank you so much, sir. I think Mr. Ben has to leave. He has another program lined up at 1:30. So our sincere thanks to him for joining us. And if Tanvi, you have any questions for Mr. Ben, can you please ask it quickly?
Hello. Hello.
Yes.
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, sir. We have a question for you.
Okay.
After implementation of new norms of social distancing, it seems that it is very difficult to do business as a private operator. So, sir, what is your view that within how much time aviation industry will be stable? And what are the innovative ways possible to make it stable little faster?
Good question. Thank you. Again, there is a short-term transformation. There is a long-term transformation. We believe that vaccination will come to the market by a year end. And we believe that the market will neutralize and normalize in 2 years form. Having said that, um, we have to provide a safe environment for our passengers and honor this biological threat the best we can. So therefore, the more design of touchless experience, the more safety for our passengers. And on the private operators, we have a 50-year concession agreement. So therefore, a 2-year hardship is not as big of a problem for us because we have 50 years to make sure that our assets are fully vested and they are performing. And the bigger picture, this legacy work of bringing the future to India and changing the games and the rules of future design and a smart airport in India is the bigger aspirations for us. So therefore, a 2-year challenge, we have to do what we have to do. Safety and quality is our top-notch priority. But during these 50 years, how do we change the aviation industry in India and how do we bring the future and expedite it and make sure India is the very first to experience 22nd century smart design airports is why we wake up in the morning.
Thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us. And it was a very informative and insightful session. Thank you so much. And can I request the other panelists that we continue for 5 more minutes to listen to the questions of the students? Can we take 5 more minutes with the other panelists?
Sure.
So thank you. Thank you so much for joining, Mr. Ben.
Pleasure, of course.
Tanvi, if you have questions for the other panelists, please continue.
Yes, ma'am. We have a question on how aviation industry will recover fastly from its aero and non-aero revenue and to recover its losses post-pandemic situation. And what strategies are what strategies industries are following for mitigating the risk? This question is pointed towards Mr. Ashwini, sir.
Okay, thank you. So I'll come quick. There are two parts that you say that what is the impact on the business right now and what the industry is doing to come out of it. And you spoke about aero and non-aero revenue. So let me first distinguish, as Dr. Goyal said, that in India the non-aero revenue which comes from passenger spend at an airport is not as high as we would want it or desire it to be. Such markets in Europe and US have actually developed well, where the passenger or non-aero revenue is marginally high and substantially high in Europe. This would mean that an airport would rely more from money which it earns from passenger spend at an airport rather than tax an airline for higher revenue. This trend is changing, I must say, with the private airports like GVK, GMR, and now Adani coming in, would change this trend because such airports are built as business entities. Whereas while airports were developed in India in the regime of the Airports Authority of India, they were more from a government standpoint of providing facilities for airlines to operate from. So there was a different bent of mind. It's like a railway station, a private station versus a government run station. I'm not saying government does not bother, but the impact of earning revenue was not the primary thought process. And therefore, the airport environment were not so attractive to bring in the motivation for passengers to spend. This is changing. And with this, new modern smart airports are coming up. So number one, airports which are privatized have learned this. And I must say from this, the Airports Authority of India has also taken a lot of corrective action in terms of understanding this aspect of business and are trying to improve and realigning their thought process. So your answer, I think privatization will give it a good boost going forward, that there would be more revenue coming in from non-aero sources. This would also make airlines more comfortable in terms of money being spent to operate at an airport. So this is how the thing will shift going forward. In terms of COVID, as you asked me, um, the airports have to bring in technology which is touchless, which in a smaller form had started appearing. If you know that now people have, you can do home boarding card printing. Now there is a home baggage tag printing as well. You just need to go and drop your bag. You don't need to go look at any help, any assistance. In fact, in US, the airlines charge you in case you go to the counter to check in. So to that extent, the systems have been developed. I think in India, this had started to some extent. And now with the post-COVID era, this will really pick up in a big way, and which is going to be very good. And that's the future. And this would be one way of assuring a passenger that he's keeping in line with the norms of not touching things, in line of norms of not trying to crowd into an area and so on. So I think this will change, and I hope I've answered part of this question for you. And social distancing norm will have to become part of an airport operations. So that means at a given time, if an airport could have handled, say, 30 flight departures in an hour, which would bring in some 25,000 passengers, would now have to spread their peaks in a way where all flights can operate, but probably at one time there is no queuing beyond a certain level, which will breach such norms. So rather than having morning, evening peaks, probably the operations will spread more during the day, or the operations of an airport will be spread for longer time durations. This is what I can see right now happening. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Ashwani Khanna. We have more questions, but if the panelists can permit us, if you agree, we can mail the questions to you. Students have asked a lot of questions. Since we do not have time, if the panelists agree, we can mail the questions to you and get the answers for the students. And finally, if the panelists have anything more to share with the students, final words to the students.
May I, if you permit me?
Yes, please. Yes, yes, sir.
Just to put two more points here. You know, why aviation will pick up and why it will come back is end, the population of our country, this is only growing. The development of our country is only happening. There are better institutes, smarter people are coming out, more educated people. There will be upskilled jobs which they will take up. Their propensity to spend will only go up. Air travel will only come back very quickly into the system. Three things which drive air travel: the business reasons, the holiday reasons, the family meetings and relations which happen, you know, family meetings, relationships that you go and meet. These three, four things are not going to change so much. Today, you are trying to do business through a web call or something, but nothing like doing business across the table, shaking hands, you know, getting that thing. You know, the world has developed doing business this way. It will not go away so fast. Maybe your business travel may change a bit, but not forever. And you know, this will come back as business grows. Holiday, virtual versus actual. You cannot experience, you know, swimming in you know, water, just sitting in your house, whatever TV or video you see. So I think this is all going to come back. This is how the societies got built. How fast, how soon will all depend on how fast we are able to adapt to a vaccine, adapt to understanding the virus better. That's this is what I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. As Mr. Pranav also has to leave, I think we can close the session today. So that's our time for today. And our expert panelist has given a confidence to all of us that the aviation industry will overcome the crisis. And even now, air travel is as safe as ever. And the airlines are well prepared for that. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the panelists and all the guests who joined us today. So we had a very meaningful session today. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tanvi, for helping me. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon.
Thank you.